Now, it's considered normal to pass your acres down, but if you got more children, well, you try to buy more ground. So you borrow heaps of money just to give your kids a go. After all is said and done, you've taught them all you know. Chapter 4, You Taught Them All You Know. I had a charmed childhood, waking up to the sound of a fine soprano voice coming from the kitchen. Mum was always rehearsing something. In fact, Mum and Dad both had voice training in Kerrang by Mrs. Brooker, who I think was conservatorium trained. They really did sing beautifully, and those who remember them in the Mallee and later in the Moree district will testify to that. Mum would never sing without Dad, though. She lacked confidence to be a solo artist. Ever since I sang, "Oh, what a beautiful morning," in my mother's rose garden in Quambatook, the year that the musical Oklahoma became a hit in Australia, I've been conscious of my love of music. Mum and Dad thought it would be ideal if I learned the piano, as they probably wished they'd done. I'm sure they saw me as a potential built-in piano accompanist for them. Miss McCulloch, a piano teacher from Kerrang, would come to Quambatook once a week and give lessons. I did as I was told and endured the most boring hours of my childhood. Miss McCulloch was a dear old girl, but she did nothing to change my hatred of being stuck at the piano. As a kid, I had no ambition to be a pianist, and I found the endless repetition of scales both torturous and pointless. My mates were outside in the paddock kicking a footy, and I was in the front room of the house practising the A minor scale. By the age of 7, I'd learned to play a couple of pieces by heart, including a trio piece called The Gallop. At local concerts, including the Kerrang Talent Quest, I played this trio piece with my cousins, Doug and Gerald. Everyone thought the trio was wonderful, but I still hated it. I also sang Tell Me a Story with Doug. I used to have my piano lessons in the local weatherboard town hall, the Mechanics Institute. One night I left my music on the piano, and that same night the hall burned down, piano and all. I must admit thinking, "You beauty!" It wasn't me who started the fire, if that's what you're thinking. Ironically, 30 years later, an ex-teacher of mine came to one of my concerts in Bendigo. She told me that Miss McCulloch had passed away and that she used to tell people often that I was her favourite student because I had a soft touch. Apparently I was her John. Well, bugger me, she must have had some crook students. I tried to please my parents by keeping the piano going when I went to boarding school, but I was not, and never will be, any good at reading music. I found it very taxing. It didn't come naturally to me at all. I just thumped bass notes with my left hand and played chords with my right, which worked well enough if there was another person playing the melody at the high end. I guess familiarity with the keyboard has helped me as a writer to understand sharps and flats and intervals and so on. So now I can write a music chart, but it's laborious and generally unnecessary. Bugger the piano. I've always had a piano in my house, but it never beckons me. You can't play it around the campfire. I like that Larson cartoon of the good old cowpokes in their chaps and tall hats sitting around the fire. One of them says to the other, "Pull that piano out of your back pocket there, Jed, and play us a tune." So with Mum's enthusiasm and Dad's banjo playing and his voice, it's no wonder one of us boys would lead a musical life. Mum didn't mind writing the odd poem either, so I guess that's where my writing talents come from. It was Mum's idea to send me to Scotch College in Melbourne in 1960. The local Mann family sent their boys there. If it was good enough for the Manns, it was good enough for her boys. Going to Scotch College for 4 years was one of the best things that happened to me. Not only did it open my eyes to how other people live, especially in the city, but also to a range of musical styles. The music scene in Melbourne in the early 60s was a mixture of traditional jazz and folk singing, at least in the upper middle-class suburbs around Scotch College. Coffee lounges were all the rage. They had either jazz bands or folk singers. It was very trendy to be a member of a jazz club. Little dance halls all over Melbourne were in full swing. Out of this era was born Judith Durham and the Seekers. I was a boarder at Scots, so I was only able to go to these places on a weekend if I had a suburban Scotch college mate to stay with. Even before I had the freedom of being a boarding house prefect, my mate Zeke and I used to sneak out at night and in the junior school playground change our red school ties for skinny black ones. We go to the Bohemian-style jazz clubs and coffee lounges until 3 a.m. We were never caught. It was here that I heard Martin Wyndham Reed singing Waltzing Matilda like it was the last song he would ever sing. I can't explain it, but there was a power there that I'd never heard before. I'd already been to a Pete Seeger concert at Melbourne Town Hall and been blown away by the rustic texture of his banjo playing and the clear message songs he sang. He opened my ears to real folk music, and I'd fallen in love with the sexy, pure voice of Joan Byers. Her voice just melted my soul. She played a finger-picking style on a nylon string guitar. I had to have a guitar like hers, and that's when I started the double thumbing style that I use today. My song Wonthaggi is a good example of this. Of course, Bob Dylan came out of all that too. Pete Seeger made a couple of Dylan's songs famous. Bob Dylan hooked up with Joan Byers and eventually became more famous than any of them. My fans have often related my harmonica playing, while playing the guitar, to Bob Dylan's, but I guarantee I was playing harmonica before he was. I started in 1950 when I was 5. But despite these American influences, for me, the Aussie seed had been sown. I formed a group at Arthur Robertson, our boarding house, and called it the John D. 4. There were 3 Johns and 1 David. Our only claim to fame was to sing at the annual Boarders' Hop and the school dance. Everything we did was a direct copy of the Kingston Trio. We had a lot of fun working out harmonies. I played the only guitar, my mate and nylon string, and John Thompson played a bongo drum. It really wasn't until I left school and started studying the little American folk songbooks, I think they were called folkways, that I really became interested in performing solo. I also joined the Scotch College Choir that joined up with St Catherine's and MLC, 2 of the nearby girls' schools, to perform things like Handel's Messiah. I was a second tenor. It was a good way to meet girls.